As Miloš said, I have been in games a long time. I'm very, very old. So I'm going to just give you a brief overview of who I am and why I'm here. I'm obviously not Serbian, so as you can tell. So my name is Michael Movel. Yes, I'm Michael Movel. I'm the creative director of football games at Nordeus. So I have been working in games for about 25 years. This is me a long time ago. I've been in many different roles. I've been a coder, as you can see. Although this was when coders were coders. Nowadays they're sexy and cool and looking great. I've worked on many different games. Some of them not so good. Some of them better than that. For example, Batman, you can see up there. Batman Dark Tomorrow. I think that was one of the lowest scored games in history. Thank you very much. I've also worked on games like Mortal Kombat 2, which you may have heard of, but you might be too young to have heard of that. That was when I first started in the industry, and I was a wide-eyed quality assurance technician, and that was an amazing experience for me. So all of these games, whether they're good or not so good, have given me a real insight into the creative process of games and really taught me a lot. So, what are we going to talk about? I'm going to give you a really brief overview of how we make games. I'm kind of sandwiched between two real experts in business, so I'm not going to be as clever as them, but I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what it's like to make a game. So, I'm going to go through why we make games. I'm going to ask myself, how do we make games? And I'm going to focus on art, design, and programming in particular. There's many more people involved in a game making, but we're going to focus on that. So, why do we make games? Nikolai has covered a lot of this, so I'll skip through. He had this exact slide, actually, so we'll skip through that. But one of the reasons is that games is a massive market, and it's growing incredibly, as you found out. They also set trends, again, as you found out. So this is how it used to be when I was young. There's me playing games. And this is how it is now. Gamers are superstars. Games are setting trends in the real world. So, I mean, I saw my son the other day teaching my 70-year-old mother how to do the floss, which is a dance from a famous game. And he never played the game. From Fortnite, so it's seeping through into the real world, and we have things like Ninja, who's a YouTuber who's just been signed by Adidas. I think Louis Vuitton is making costumes for League of Legends. It's mainstream, but for me, why it's mainstream now and why it's so much of a big thing in the world is because games do something that films and books and music don't do, and I love all those mediums, but they don't put you in the story as games do. You really feel connected to this. And I saw most of you are gamers, right? I saw you put your hands up, and I think he was asking you were gamers. That's right? Yeah, okay, cool. So you all have your own experiences, but I'll just run through a few here for me. These are personal experiences, and that's important as well. Gamers have their own personal experiences. So this, who knows what this game is? So it's a very famous game, and for me it's I love games with stories, and this is a real personal journey about a guy in a zombie apocalypse. Of course it's games, and getting to know a young girl who's very frightened and running away, and through the controls that you experience within the game, you get to know these people. You control each of them, and you get to know their personalities. You get to see their differences, and you go on a journey with them, and you feel like you really connect with them. Same. Who knows what this game is? Good. You should know. Top 11. So for me, I still haven't won this. This is the triple trophy haul. This is the triple crown. This is winning the Champions League, the Cup, and the League in top 11. And I've been playing it for a long time, and I still haven't done that. And I've got this close. I was in the Champions League final. I'd won the cup, I'd won the league, and I lost in the last minute. And that really got my emotions going. It really made me feel part of the, got me angry. Really made me feel part of the game. And whenever I do that, I'm going to be telling stories about this. I'm going to be telling my friends, I did it in, 2025 probably is when I'm going to do it. But it's emotional. And this one, does anyone know this game? More than I expected. So this is a game called Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. And it's a very emotional game for me. So it's a game where you control both of these brothers. They're young kids. You control both of them on one controller. And you have to work together. You have to get them to work together in order to complete the quest. And the quest is to find their father's dying, and they have to go on a quest to save him. And as you go through the quest, you learn the fears of each of the children. You learn how they help each other. You have to get over puzzles by combining their efforts, and you really do feel part of it. And I played this after the birth of my second son. So I had two boys, brothers, and I'm sitting this playing at like 12 a.m. at night, and I played all the way through. And it gets to the end. I won't give the end away, but by the time I got to the end, I was absolutely sobbing my heart out. I was crying so much. I'm not going to tell you if it's tears of joy or tears of sadness, but it was such an experience, a really emotional experience. And this is what games can do. And I was emotional because I felt part of it. So I'm going to show you a video now. This is a video of a Nordeus game, Heroic. And again, this, for me, gets your emotions going. And this is why games are so brilliant. So for me, that just explains why I play a game. So when I'm playing a game, I make a story in my head. I create situations, and I tell my friends, I tell people, and it goes beyond just kind of the game itself. And that leads to our players. So this is why we make games. We make games for our players. We make games to give our players dreams. And this is just a couple of reactions from some of our players. So Heroic. Don't usually comment about games, but Heroic is simply amazing. And we have many of these things. Sometimes, even when you work on a bad game, and this isn't a bad game, this is an amazing game, but even when you work on a bad game, you get that connection with the players. You start understanding the players. And even on a bad game, you can give them dreams, and you can give them something to aspire to as well. So we have another one from Top 11. We have many from Top 11. Football is my life. I love football more than my girlfriend. Top 11 is my passion, and I seriously think about a coaching career. So we get many people thinking, I can go into a real coaching situation because they've lived the dream within a game. And that's what games give us, I think. So I'm going to go very briefly through how we make games. This is, as I said, just a glimpse. How many of you make games? I think he asked that as well, didn't you? Did you ask that? No? Okay. Does anybody make games here? Okay, cool. Good. If you all made games, this would be pointless, so I'd just go home. So, there are many disciplines in gaming. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about three, or focus on three. One is design, one is programming, one is art. So I see design as almost like a director of a film. They need to know everything about the film. They need to set in motion certain events. They need to create the mechanics. So they have to have a combination of inspiration and detail and pragmatism. So I don't know if there can be some confusion over what a designer is. So in many design in games is not an artistic thing. It's not drawing pictures. It's not anything like that. It is creating mechanics. It's creating stories. It's creating scripts. It's understanding how the game will be played. It's the kind of the what of the game. Programming is creating that world. It's taking what the designer has designed and made and making it into something that's actually tangible, something that you can interact with. And art, of course, is everything to do with the visual. So this isn't just the big 3D graphics, although it is that. It's animation. It's also the UI, so the user interface that you see, the 2D graphics, all of the images. Anything image-wise is the artist. So this is a very kind of basic overview of the process. Number one, you need a vision. You need to understand what you're going to do. So you need to spot a business opportunity. You need to see what you want, what sort of gap in the market there is, or if you're very good. So, for example, Nordeus is amazing at football games, so maybe they could own the football business. And then you need to define the idea. What this means is you need to almost create a box for what the idea will be in. You need to set up parameters. You need to understand what it is you want to achieve. It's a very high-level vision that the game will work within. So the second thing you do is experiment. So this is where you want to go absolutely crazy with your ideas. Nothing is too crazy. You want to go bold. You want to go out there. And the reason you want to do this is, A, because at this stage it's very cheap. You're normally doing it on brainstorms, things like that. And then you make the best ideas out of that. So you want to go bold and crazy so that you don't miss out on anything amazing, essentially. Then you test them out. So you do this really quickly. You make as quickly as possible. You don't think about things. You just do it. And along with that, you will explore the art direction. So this is where you start looking into what sort of visuals you would like in a game, what you would like the game to look like, how it would fit with different trends, etc. Then third step is full production. So full production is where you really flesh out the details. You really add a lot of details to the game, the experiments that you've done. And then you start scoping that out. So you understand how long that will take, how many people it will take, milestones, etc. So ramping up the team. And essentially what you have to do here is try to meet the milestones. So you don't want to... I work for a company called Lionhead in England, and a really creative company, amazing creative company. It was a guy called Peter Molyneux, who was one of my heroes when I was growing up. And I got to work with him. It was fantastic. And his ideas, every time I heard, he opened his mouth, I was just looking at him, and he was coming out with all this creativity. But it took 7 years to make a game at Lionhead. And that was a team of like 150 people. And that's way too long. And it was just because the creativity was unbound. It was just go for the creative process and don't worry about anything else. So we didn't meet milestones there. We had many milestones and we never met any of them. And then 4 is the game is live. So what that means is, when I was first starting my career, there was you made a game, you put it in a box, and you shipped it, and that was it. Nowadays, mobile games and others increasingly it's just the start of the process. So you need to start understanding how the players are interacting with your game. And then you need to start adding new content, and you need to make the players happy. So this is kind of the start of the journey, and this is a really exciting thing for us as game makers now, that once you release a product, it's not just, I don't care about the players anymore. It is the start of a journey with the players, which is really crucial. So I just want to step through quite quickly maybe an example of a process. Again, really high level, but just to give you a flavour of how a game is made. So, first of all, let's talk about the vision. How would you make a vision? So you would spot an opportunity. You try to spot an opportunity. So let's keep it topical and say, okay, I think there's a big opportunity in games about the business of gaming. So there have been some, actually. There's Game Dev Story, but we can do better than that. We can make billions out of this, let's say. So who is it for? Aha. Now, this is another lesson of game development. Things go wrong. So here should be a picture of you guys, but there isn't. Imagine here a picture of all you beautiful people sitting down, enjoying yourself. And so you want to do here, though, is you want to understand who you're making the game for. So let's say we want to make game for a cool set of people, sophisticated as you all are, I'm sure. Students or young professionals, so kind of a young audience. And the more you can understand here, the more you understand what you're making the game for and who you're making the game for. And then you can add more details. So, for example, we're going to make it on mobile. We're going to make it free to play. And let's say we make 9 months to make. So the more details you put here, the smaller the box will be. The smaller the box that you make your game in will be. The smaller it is, the more concise it is, but at the same time, the smaller it is, the less chance you have of going off in crazy different directions. So essentially, the smaller it is, the more business focused you'd be. This is simplifying it a little bit. The bigger it is, the more creative you may be. This is my design of a logo. I hope you like it. I don't think we need artists anymore. This is perfect. So this is our game. Gamingu, our biznis, the game. This is what we're going to make. So once we've got that idea and we've got the vision, the next thing we want to do is experiment. So these are the things that we're trying to answer. We want to know, what is the game? We've got a very high-level overview of it, but what is it really? We start digging into details a little bit. Where's the fun? This is really essential. If you make a game and none of you find it fun, one, it's probably not going to sell very well, and two, you're going to really not enjoy working on it. So you need to understand if it can make money. There are people who don't care about this, and that's fine. There's a lot of indie developers who would prefer to just make a game and make it creative, and that's a beautiful thing to do. But if you want to make money, this is where you start thinking about it. Can it provide variety? So this is important for a mobile game. If you make a game and you release it, and there's nothing for people to do for the next 2 or 3 years, then you won't have a very good mobile free-to-play game. It will die pretty quickly. So you need to understand. You don't have to spec out exactly what the variety is, but you need to understand that it can provide variety. And then what would it look like? So this is where the artist will start experimenting and trying out different visual styles. And is it going to be pixel graphics? Is it going to be amazing 3D vista? Is it going to be cartoony? Whatever it is, you start understanding what it would look like, but you go wide. You don't focus in on one thing. You try and experiment here. This is all about experimenting. So just to give you a kind of a brief insight into what the different disciplines might do in this stage, the designer would potentially organize workshops or brainstorming, so get people together, get the ideas out, try to push their ideas, level up their ideas, go crazy, and then bring all those ideas together to decide what to test, what's the best things to test here. And you need to choose fast here. This is all about speed, this section. So a programmer, they make things, and they make things at this stage quick and dirty. They don't care how things work, they just make them work. Maybe you don't even use a code. You could use a video, you could use a board game, make a board game, things like that. And also it's really important that, I don't know if you guys have any interactions with programmers, but when I was young, the best programmers were always the ones who were creative. It doesn't always go hand in hand, creativity in your head anyway, creativity and programmers. But it's really important that programmers are creative, and plus the ideas. Everybody on the team needs to be creative. And then the artist will, of course, plus the ideas, as the programmer will do. And then, this is interesting, provide the minimum art. So at this stage, the actual art in the prototypes or the tests that you are producing doesn't matter so much. It's just get something done quickly and see if it's fun. But what does matter is exploring the styles. So this is what I talked about before. The artist will start exploring different styles. So once you've chosen something, so let's say the team have gone through various different game genres, and they've decided that the game that we want to make, Gamingu, kako, biznis, the game, is going to be a first-person shooter. And that would, in order to ramp up the production, then you've made a choice, you've probably gone into lots of details, you've tested different game mechanics out, you've got a visual style that you want to go for. Now it's time to start ramping up the production. So what you would do, what you want to answer is, how do we release the game? This is when you start focusing and saying, we've got the idea, we've got some details, this is what we want to do, we want to release the game. So you need to scope the project, as I mentioned. You need to start ramping up the team, get everybody you need in place, and then you need to set the milestones. It's really important to have something to aim for. Even if you break the milestones, at least you've got something to focus on. But try not to break the milestones. And then you try and meet the deadlines, as I mentioned. So from a designer's point of view, you start really thinking from the player's perspective. And you're the champion of the player at this point as a designer. You need to start creating a lot of detail. So whereas before you're kind of high-level ideas, you're testing things out, doing it quickly, now you're starting to make choices, and you're starting to drill really deep into all of the designs, and you're starting to flesh those designs out and the detail out. So this, for example, as a designer, you have to go right down into the level of detail, such as, how do I open the door? Am I going to burst through it like that? Am I going to sneak through it like that? This changes the nature of a game. So if I'm going to open a door slowly, sneak through it quietly, that first-person shooter would be one where you're sneaking about. It's not going to be one where you're bursting through and shooting everything in sight. And then you need to be really good at communicating. You need to make sure everybody on the team understands the design. And ideally, you would start inspiring people. A passionate team is always the most important. You need to start getting across. You need to be the cheerleader of the team. So as a programmer, you need to start creating the right systems. I put right in capitals because that doesn't mean necessarily the best or the most advanced systems. You need to understand what you want to get out of it, and then make that as quickly and as well as possible. So implement fast and clean as opposed to quick and dirty. So still fast, but now you're starting to create code and build up the systems that will be used over and over again. So you want them to be a solid foundation. And you need to offer new solutions. So as I mentioned before, I love working with programmers who you go to them and say, can you make me a big, giant jellyfish that will shoot out massive lasers all over the place? And they'll say, no, but what I can do is I can create a whole fleet of flying sharks for you with lasers coming out of their eyes. That's the sort of thing that you want to get from a coder. Not necessarily the sharks, but you get the idea. And the artist here, so they will start really drilling down into the artistic vision, understanding what will be the art at the end of the project, and they will also start producing those assets. So, as I mentioned, everything you see in the game is the artist. That covers a whole wide range of people. We have 2D artists at Nordeus, we have 3D artists, we have animators, we have UI, user interface artists, all sorts of people. You need to visualize the world. So this is, again, you're kind of coming from the player's point of view, but you're also coming from a more kind of thoughtful point of view of trying to create something amazing. I will just say that not all art here has to be the best art. Think of something like Minecraft. Minecraft has really distinctive art, but it's not jaw-droppingly amazing. It's very blocky, it's very pixelated, but it did exactly what it needed to do, and that's what a good artist does. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to push themselves to create new things all the time. It's understanding what the game needs, what the player needs, and how those two things come together. They need to sit together to work properly. And then, of course, you build on the creativity. So while I mentioned that designers do kind of drive the mechanics of the game and where the game is going, artists are really, really important. It doesn't always have to be art designers that drive that. Designers can follow artists. Artists can create something that inspire a designer to then come up with a new idea. And it's worth saying that during full production, it doesn't mean you can't change things. In fact, you will change things. No doubt about it. What you start with at the beginning of full production will be very, very, very different to what you end up with. So then, the final part of the process is we are live. This is, so here, the fun is just starting. This is, as I mentioned, this is the start of a long process. Hopefully is. I mean, with Top 11, for example, it's 10 years old. So imagine that. It's a game that's come out, and for 10 years it's been going. I'm not sure how long it took to make, but probably less than 10 years, I guess. Soft launch versus global launch. Does anybody understand those terms? You do. Good. Yes, that's good. So soft launch is something that I didn't know for a long time, coming from a kind of traditional console and PC background. Soft launch is when you launch a product, a game, in just a few territories, in a few markets, and you start understanding how the game works. And you do this from 2 points of view. You do it from a gameplay point of view, so you're understanding if the game works, if it doesn't work, what's good, what's bad. You start looking into player behavior and adapting your designs. And you also do it from a monetization point of view, so you're trying to understand what players will spend their money on in order to make the money. At global launch, as it says, is when you're happy with the soft launch, and soft launch can last from anywhere between a couple of weeks to a good few months, maybe even a year or more than that. And once you're happy with where you're at, you then move on to global launch, which is where you launch it worldwide. And you need to, when you're live, you need to adapt. You need to change things, especially during soft launch. You would change game design, you would change game art. You don't want to change too much. You don't want to change the whole direction. Otherwise, you may as well start a new game. That's a bad thing to do. But you will adapt and you will change parts of the design. And really importantly, when you're live, you need to create a lot of content. You need to create things for the player to play. So Top 11 has many events. Heroic is starting to build up those events and add those events in. Heroic has new minions. It has all sorts of things that we're adding in all the time. And you need to keep adding those things over the lifetime of the product. So I'll go through again. Designer. Here what you want to do as a designer is you want to create amazing events. You want to keep people excited to play the game. This is really exciting for me as a designer, is you really start communicating with the players. You do that all through the process, but this is where the players are invested in your game, they're playing the game, they're really enthusiastic about it or not, and you start talking to them and you start understanding them, and this is where you can really start making a difference in terms of like making events that target the sort of players that you want to get. Before this, up until this point, you're kind of making a guess as to the type of players you want to make. I remember a guy I worked with, he made a game, a match 3 game, and they targeted it, as they were building it, they were targeting it at a very young audience. They thought it was going to be under 14 females who played this. And they targeted everything, all their monetization techniques, the gameplay towards this group. And then when they released it, it was 50-year-old housewives and men as well, which was it's completely different to what they were expecting. So this does change a lot. As a programmer, it's really, really important here that you keep everything running. If your game crashes, you'll have some very, very angry gamers. You need to fix any issues and errors, and you need to implement any new features that the designers come up with. And the artists need to keep creating, keep making things, keep the game fresh. So, as I mentioned before, here we go, more problems. We're going to have to imagine here. So this is, if you're interested in any of these things, these game design, game art, and game programming are kind of the minimum you need to make a game. You can make a game, but it probably won't succeed if you do it just like that, to be honest with you. That's not to say it's not going to, but you'd have a measure of luck if you want to get that. All of these people outside of those three disciplines really, really help. They're integral. It's not just around the outside, they're integral to making a game nowadays in a professional way. So, that's it from me. This is just a brief overview of what we've covered. It's why do we make games? It's a huge market. It's setting trends. It's exciting to be part of this, and it's selling dreams to players. This is the most exciting thing for me personally. How do we make games? We create a vision, we experiment, we produce the game, and then we support the game. And then here we've got coming up, as Milos mentioned, we've got several events coming up that really drill down into into designing, into programming, and being an artist. This is just some traits that designers should have, that programmers should have, that artists should have, that we've already talked about, but this is a summary of that. So, hvala puno.